Hello everybody, welcome to That's Football. They've done it. They've only gone and done it. Tottenham have sacked Ange Postecoglu. It's been announced in the last few minutes. Here we go for Ange. Here we go out the door. But look, you know what? Lots and lots of reaction on social media about this. Tottenham are saying, following a review of performances and after significant reflection, the club can announce that Postecoglu has been relieved of his duties. They say, we're extremely grateful to Ange for his commitment and contribution. Ange will be remembered as the third manager in our history to deliver a European trophy, and also the first manager in 17 years to deliver a trophy, and also the first manager in most people's lifetime to deliver Spurs' best trophy. I mean, look, in my lifetime, they've won the FA Cup in 91, Worthington Cup, I think. So it's, I'm not young, so it's definitely their best trophy they've won. But what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? I've got to say, it's really easy in modern society to just pick a side and have a good old moan. I think they've made the right choice. I really do think they've made the right choice. And everyone, look, I completely agree that in a way it's very Spursy. You know, you win a trophy, something that people take the piss out of you for. I mean, what's the loneliest place on earth? Spurs trophy cabinet. But it's not now. It's got the bloody Europa League in it. So if you'd said to me at the start of the season, Ange will win the Europa League for Spurs and they'll sack him, I'd say, what? What did he do? You know, it must be non-football, but ultimately, this has got Erik ten Hag at Man United written all over it. And if you don't learn, then you don't learn. Use that quote, Goldbridge. If you don't learn, you don't learn. There is a split in that fan base at Tottenham. There is going to be people out there who are not Tottenham fans ridiculing the fact that they lost, 22 games in the Premier League? So you've got a split. And I think when you've got a manager and a club that's got a split, sometimes it's better to just go, okay, we acknowledge the problem, new start for everybody. Because if they go into that new season with that split, the split's still there. And let's be honest, Tottenham under Ange are wide open in the Premier League. In Europe it worked, but in the Premier League it didn't. And what are the chances that Tottenham next season, after 2 years of Ange, their light switch players suddenly turn it on? That squad is going to turn the light on and off very, very quickly in the first few months. You invest in Ange in the summer, and then it all goes wrong, and then he gets sacked anyway. This is exactly what happened at Manchester United with Erik ten Hag. But Erik ten Hag finished 8th and won an FA Cup and was still gone within 3 months. This is a guy that lost 22 games, won a Europa League that most Premier League sides would have won. It was a Man United Spurs final. The context is key here. People are saying, look at Spurs for doing this. You know, typical that they sack a guy who's won their first trophy in 17 years and wins their best trophy, arguably, in living history. But the reality is, we all know they were crap in the Premier League, and we all know there's a very big chance they'll be crap in the Premier League next season. And we all know that he will be sacked very quickly, and we all know that they'll waste a load of money on players that he wants that ultimately could be spent on a new start. I think they've made the right choice, but this is society in 2025. You're going to get ridiculed whatever you do. So I think Spurs have just got to go, you know what? We know we're going to get ridiculed. Let's just get on with doing this, because that squad is full of bottlers. And ultimately, I don't think Ange is in a bad situation anyway. He gets sacked. Some people say it's harsh. He'll go and get another job. He'll always be able to say, I said I'd win a trophy in 2 years and I did. I think Ange walks out of this in a good situation. And as I've said to you before, it's about who comes in next. Now, I don't know who the next Spurs manager is going to be. Get your thoughts in the chat. I'll have a quick look at what the odds are for the next manager for next Tottenham. But what are your thoughts? I'd be interested to read them, because I think they got it right. I think it's really easy to just moan and say, they got it wrong. I think they got it right. I really do. You're going to spend a lot of money on a manager that's probably going to get sacked by Christmas, if not before. Soon as Spurs lose a couple of games, the pressure's going to be on. The media will feed into that. Their fans will feed into that. Their players will feed into that. I think ultimately they've made the right choice, because we all know he's gone by Christmas, isn't he? Unless they have a miraculous start to the season. And what do you know about players? What do we know about the modern footballer? They don't just suddenly after 2 years of working for a manager, suddenly start turning up every week. They're the ultimate bottle jobs. Thomas Frank is absolutely massively nailed on. I mean, that's the manager I thought it would be. Second favourite is Marco Silva at 8-1, Oliver Glasner 12-1. So Thomas Frank, and to be frank, he deserves this. And to be frank, he's the right choice. Very well organised, gets the best out of players, and they do need somebody to go in there and discipline them. And it'll be interesting to see what Spurs players actually survive Thomas Frank in the long term, because I think there's a few players at Spurs who behave like absolute prats, and they need a culture change in relation to that for sure, and Thomas Frank could well bring that in. But the Ange era is over, and I think it's right. I do. I don't normally do that, but I think they've got it right, and I think it's just so similar to the Erik Ten Hag situation at Man United. I wanted Ten Hag to stay, by the way, but I think the players felt that, they probably weren't as engaged as they should have been. The club gave him money. We had some bad results, and it just felt like the unease from the previous season carried on into the next season, and that was inevitable with Tottenham. It really was. I think even winning the Europa League, so many people tried to discredit that. Pundits, ex-players, etc., saying it's a joke that Spurs and Man United are in a final that they actually qualified for and did well to get to the final of. So, look, Ange is better off out of it, and Spurs are better off rebuilding a new start. That's my opinion. I think they've got this right. You could argue that they should have kept him. Winning a trophy with Spurs, earned you that right. And I think that's what I was saying with Ten Hag last year. But I think, honestly, the writing was going to be on the wall. And they've probably just saved themselves a lot of summer transfer money and basically a bad season next season, because Spurs aren't going to win the Champions League. Their aim is to get out of the Champions League. They had a lot of injury problems this year, and I just think it would have been so easy to start the season badly, not do well in the Champions League, be a mess by Christmas, sack Ange, and you're sort of like going, Rah. I think Spurs need a rebuild. If they'd lost that final, they'd have needed a rebuild. I mean, the best thing to say is the decision should have been made before the final. Like, the fact that they've won the final and took their time shows weak leadership, I would say that. Man United did the same. The FA Cup final changed their opinion. There was a lot of talk that Ten Hag would get sacked after the FA Cup final when he lost to Man City, and he won. I think Spurs should have had their mind made up before that final. That's the only criticism I would have of the Spurs leadership team, is that you should have made your mind up before the final, regardless of what happened, because realistically, you then could have said you sacked and moved very, very quickly. The market, people are doing stuff in the transfer market. You may have delayed that. New managers now got to come in, reassess the squad in the middle of June. This is now catch up for Spurs. They could have saved themselves 3 weeks. That would be a fair criticism, actually, because winning the Europa League contextually in a way that Ange didn't normally play, fair play, they deserved to win it, but that should not have changed their mind from what had gone on before. One game shouldn't change your mind. I think that's a fair point. Get your comments in below. Smash a like on the video and make sure you subscribe. Give us your thoughts. Have Spurs got it right? Have they got it wrong? And why? Speak to you on the next one.